Howdy, my name is Matthew Michael, and welcome to my presentation for PBSI 107, Psychology and Film. Today, we're analyzing the main character of Pixar's Ratatouille, Remy, through a clinical psychological lens, and I'm going to be proposing that Remy exhibits traits highly consistent with autism spectrum disorder level 1, also known as ASD level 1. So, let's begin with the basics. Our subject is Remy from the film Ratatouille. He's an incredibly intelligent rat with exceptional sensory abilities that fuel his passion for fine cooking and cuisine. So the setting helps us understand the context of his differences. Remy's caught between two worlds here, the unsophisticated survival focus of the rat colony and the fine dining culture of Paris, France, which emphasizes perfection and cleanliness, which are things obviously a rat would not be familiar with. The entire film is driven by conflict, so Remy's love for cooking is going to clash with his colony's norms and intense human prejudice against rats cooking in the kitchen. So this cultural clash is going to be key to understanding his functional impairment. So in terms of diagnosis, my proposed diagnosis is going to be autism spectrum disorder level 1 or ASD level 1. Level 1 requires support to manage behaviors and flexibility. So the diagnosis is going to lie with the three core DSM-5 features, which are deficits in social communication and interaction, restricted or repetitive behaviors or interests, and crucially, symptoms must begin early in life and cause functional impairment. So that's coming from the DSM and a paper by Spielman et al. So the cultural context and impact and stigmas. So if Remy went to a therapist in the film's cultural context of modern day France, the diagnosis would still be ASD, as like standardized diagnostic tools like the DSM-5 are going to be used globally. And then there's going to be some stigmas around autism. Obviously, some cultures are going to view it as kind of like something holding someone back, but other cultures that are going to value like the focus and intensity that comes with autism are going to view it more as kind of like a positive thing than a negative thing. So I think it's important to consider the different cultural context and stigmas around the condition. And so, communication deficits here. There's going to be first one is going to be deficits in social communication interaction. So Remy's going to display clear social interaction deficits by actively avoiding group activities and preferring solitude. He's intellectually and sensually isolated from the group because of his unique experiences with cooking and taste. And so a perfect example of this is in a scene where he isolates himself on a roof to combine a perfect combination of cheese and strawberries. And so he's seeking intellectual stimulation over reciprocal social engagement, even when tasked with promoting group safety by sticking together. So his difficulties in engaging in reciprocal back and forth communication are also shown when he has to speak by pulling Linguini's hair. So even in the human world, he has trouble communicating. Um, Another piece of evidence is going to be the restricted interest in sensory sensitivity. So that's going to be symptom number 2. So Remy's life is solely driven by his intense focus on cooking and flavor combinations, even at personal risk, because he has to travel to the human world. And this is going to be closely linked with his sensory sensitivity. Remy has hypersensitive smell and taste. When he tastes food, he sees complex explosions of color and sounds. This indicates an overwhelming sensory process, and this is backed by research by Marco et al., which indicates that atypical sensory processing is going to be common in individuals with ASD. However, a missing symptom is going to be kind of reflective of the high variability of the spectrum. We note that one required feature is not present. So highly repetitive motor movements like rocking or flapping aren't present. Remy's repetition is more intellectual and creative, focusing on more of culinary knowledge and not self-stimulatory behavior. So this is just going to reflect the high variability and individualized presentation of symptoms in autism. So my proposed treatment plan is like has multiple steps, and it's going to be more of a strengths-based approach. The goals is going to be 1, social skills and communication support. 2, sensory integration therapy to manage like the noise and smells and commotions of a busy kitchen. And 3, mentorship that nurtures his talents, socially cooking. And so this plan is appropriate because it's going to align with the neurodiversity kind of paradigm It's going to seek to build skills for functional integration into the culinary world while preserving his extraordinary talents and not trying to stifle them in any way through this treatment. Ethical consideration is, I think, the obvious one is an attempt to kind of sort of pathologize or extinguish his creativity because his condition would be frowned upon. Instead of it needs to be harnessed and refined, and that could lead to even more creativity and satisfaction from cooking. And so I think the greatest social barrier here is going to be the intense stigmas and misunderstanding because he's perceived as a pest or a threat. He may be isolated and he may not receive the accommodation and support he needs. So there are a lot of ethical concerns and situational boundaries that need to be taken into account while going through treatment. So for broader perspectives, overall, the film's portrayal is positive and strengths-based. His intense focus is reframed as a source of his talent. While it omits like motor stims, the strengths-based media influence is critical because it encourages empathy and acceptance for neurodiversity within the film, which is really cool. And if, but the cultural there is a cultural influence on his diagnosis because if Remy's struggles were portrayed in a different culture where intense focus and sensory refinement were highly prioritized, he might not be considered disordered. So this kind of highlights how the diagnosis is always, to some degree, a product of the interaction between the individual's like unique neurology and also societal expectations. So that those two will kind of come together to influence that. And so in conclusion, Remy from Ratatouille provides a compelling case study. His character clearly demonstrates the three major diagnostic requirements of ASD, which, as we talked about, are going to be social and communication differences, restricted interests, and sensory hypersensitivity. So by adopting a strengths-based model, we can see his neurodivergent traits not as a source of impairment, but as a source of extraordinary talent. And so thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Here are my references. Thanks, and gig 'em.